the second service. I'm glad all you could swim on out. We've had a flood of rain lately. How many enjoyed the youth today? It was good. If you had come to first service, though, you could have heard me sing, and Sherry and Teresa, and who else? Jacob sang. I don't know, it may not have been the wisest thing to have the youth planned on the weekend of prom. So some of them couldn't make it for first service, so we kind of supported Jacob. Jacob in our youth department, he took it and said, hey, I'll do it. If nobody else is here, I'll do it. Next week, we've got the live band with not Clay, his dad, Casey, and that group will be leading next week. And one thing, we've got a lot of great people here at church. We want to just share what God's doing, and we want to hear more and more. Our youth department is going to start doing about once a month, and getting them up here. Yeah, that's the way I feel. I love to hear young people sing. I really do. Last week I thought was just a fabulous weekend, Easter weekend, and we ended with that song, The Chain Breaker. And you know, we've talked about God's healing choices, and it is a choice. Life is a choice. We all have choices every day of our life. And in these choices that we have, you know, we can choose to either go the right way or the wrong way, but God's healing choices, we talked about that. Primarily, that deals a lot with habits and hang-ups in our life. And then we talked about the shack. Shack was primarily about a guy that through a lot of tragedy in his life, he got to a point that he just felt like he couldn't trust God. He couldn't forgive. He was angry with God. A bunch of stuff was going on, and he got stuck there, and he just could not. And, you know, we realize any of us that lives this life, we know that it's easy to get stuck. You can get stuck on a habit or a hang-up or a hurt, and it becomes difficult. But in that song, that powerful song that they done last week about he's the pain taker, he's the chain breaker, and some out of the Celebrate Recovery, they was showing you the things that they had been delivered from and are being delivered from. You know, I don't know that we're ever finished this side of heaven. But in that song that Clay sung toward the end, it said, there's a better life. There's a better life. And that's what got me thinking about this series right here. I wanted to do this series on, folks, there's a better life than a lot of us are living. There's a lot better life. We don't want to sell out for the worst of life. We want the better life. I got here this morning, and I just got up, and I come on out early, and I was here about 6:30 this morning. And this first passage of Scripture right here, I want to just go through it. I'll just tell you right now, don't be worried if we don't get through the whole outline. We probably won't, and I'll pick up next week. But I don't want to rush this series. I don't want to rush this series at all. I want us to really think about what he's saying. One of the things that you'll find as you follow God, that his ways are not our ways. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And if I get anything across today, I hope I get that across, that the way we think, the way the world thinks, is not the way God thinks. And it takes a while for us to get that. When I was in college, I was needing work. I paid my way through college, worked my way. I got some grants and stuff. But I worked as a security. I wasn't a security guard because they wouldn't give me a gun. I was a security monitor. Like I could call somebody's breaking in over there. I'm just telling you they're doing that. I was a security monitor, I guess say. But my job was to be out there and stay up all night. And if anybody were to come in the college campus, they had to come by me. I had a lot of authority, folks. Nobody at night could come on that campus without going through me. And it made me really feel good. But I was also studying for the ministry. And I would sit out there and all night, you don't have anything to do. And it's not like they let you put a TV out there in the little booth. So I had my Bible and a notebook. And I made a habit of taking that time and studying. And so one of the things I did, I had a class on Romans. So I took the book of Romans and I read the entire book of Romans every night. So the first day of the month, I read the whole book of Romans. Second day, the whole book of Romans. Third day, the whole book of Romans. And, after you read that, you go, okay, I read that last night. Yeah, I read that the night before. But what began to happen, I noticed my focus began to go from here, came in more. And by the time I had read that thing 30 times, I had a laser focus on some stuff that I had never seen before. And I credit that to nothing more than God and the Holy Spirit. I mean, I believe that's what happened. One of the things I noticed is in Romans 7, and a lot of you have heard me talk about this because it's one of the things that I guess stuck out more than anything else. I was reading Romans 7, and that's where Saul at the time, he was a terrible failure as a so-called Christian. But he goes, the things I try to do, I can't do, and the things I don't want to do, that's what I do. And I started noticing that, and here's this preacher guy confessing that he's pretty much washed up. He's not living the life very good. He's messed up. And I said, well, what's all this about? And I kept reading, and I got out my pen. So I want you to get out your paper today. I hope you all got an outline, because I want you to do something that I did years ago. I want you to, that long first verse there, we're going to do something. So grab a pen off the back of one of these chairs or out of your purse, and we're going to do something in a minute. But what I did in the book of Romans there, I started going through Romans, the 7th chapter. I was going to see like an investigator investigating a crime. I was going to see if I could investigate and find out what Saul's problem was, or Paul, what his problem was and why he had become such a great failure. So I started going down there, and one of the first things I noticed, there was anything that's repeated and repeated and repeated, there's usually an importance to it. So I started noticing the personal pronoun I through Romans 7. There was a bunch of I's. And then he used me and he used my. And I started getting really, I started thinking about it, me and my and I, personal pronouns I. And he used it 39 times in one chapter. He used the personal pronoun either I, my, me, referring to himself 39 times in one chapter. It ends with, "O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death?" In other words, he was totally dissatisfied with his life and what it had become. And then the next chapter, you would think of a writer as writing. Of course, we believe that he was writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. He was writing, when he gets to chapter 8, you know how many times he mentions the personal pronoun I? 0. But in chapter 8, he uses the word Spirit 22 times. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, of the Spirit, all that. He said, there's now no condemnation to those that walk not after the flesh, but walk after the Spirit. So it got me really thinking about that passage. So this morning to get here at 6:30, the only thing about I love the graphics and what they do around here, and to have the graphics and be able to go through it with you, and you could see it live right there on the screen like you were looking in my Bible or something. I like that, but I basically can only give them by whatever I get by Wednesday. So if the Lord gives me anything after about Wednesday or Thursday, it's not on here. And sometimes the best stuff comes like Thursday or Friday. And that was one of the cases today. So some of the stuff I'm going to share with you today will not be on this screen. But here's what I went through. As I go through this passage, and this is called How to Have the Better Life. In this passage in Ecclesiastes 10, 1 through 10, I want you to go through there, and as I go through it and read it, I want you to circle all the personal pronouns like I, me, my, myself. He said, I thought in my heart. There's 2 right there, right? I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also was meaningless. And I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves and flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves who were born in my house, in delights of the heart of man. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. Well, if I got it right this morning, early in the morning, There's 22 personal pronouns in that passage. Well, another thing that I've learned over the years studying the Scripture, there is someone else that has a real bad time with personal pronouns. And you know that is? That's one of God's creations. It's the devil. The devil, and I'll maybe talking about this either next week or the next week, the devil was created as one of the most beautiful angels there ever was. He had the best voice of anybody. Very talented, very beautiful. How many's ever went to or saw on Facebook or something, you've went down by the ocean side and you see where they make these beautiful sculptures out of sand? How many seen that? I mean, they do the Last Supper, they do, boats and fish and all kind of stuff. I've seen it a bunch of times in Florida. If you go up and see that, if you're walking along the beach and you just see one, I've never, not one time, just thought, something, them waves kept coming up and some way or another the waves formed that beautiful artwork on the beach. I knew that someone had to have done it, right? Someone had to have participated in that beauty, or it would have never got there. If I were to have a big table up front here and I had a pile of modeling clay, and I'd say, I know we got some creative people out here who can model. I just want you to make a sculpture of your person. And if you were very gifted, you might come up and you would begin to maybe just do your hair and your face, and you would begin to do that. And we all may be standing back here and go, man, that person is talented. That person is gifted. But what would happen if in the process of doing that we begin to go, that person, what if we just started talking about the sculpture? That's the most beautiful sculpture I've ever seen. That sculpture is amazing. You can go sit down now. Let's all amazed. Let's worship the sculpture. It's so beautiful. And somehow forget the person that created the sculpture. Wouldn't make no sense, would it? Well, we find in Isaiah's writing, Isaiah 14, 13 through 14 in the NIV, see this beautiful angel that God created. And I want you to understand where the devil come from and why we actually have a real devil and what he's up to and what he's about. And when you can tell, you're acting like the devil. Remember, Flip Wilson goes, the devil made me do it. Well, some of you, the devil is making you do it because you ain't living right. And when I don't live right, the devil makes me do stuff I ain't wanting to do. But we don't have that excuse anymore since the cross of Jesus. But he says there, here's what the devil said. He said this in his heart. All this stuff starts first in your heart. And later on, what you're saying in your heart, pretty soon what you say in your heart you start acting on. You start acting on. There's never been an adulterous situation where it just happened. Like, well, I didn't know what happened. And, no, it started somewhere in the heart and the mind. Or a theft, or pretty much most everything of sin is pretty much a premeditation to it. Somebody might fly off the handle, but what I'm saying is and it started in his heart. And the devil started thinking that he is something. He is beautiful. There's nobody is more beautiful than me. There's nobody that can sing better than me. So he's got many names. Lucifer, the father of lies. He's a liar. He's a thief. And many, many names. We could go through all the names of Satan in the Bible. But here's what he said. I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of the assembly of the utmost height of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the top of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. I will make myself like the Most High. You notice how many times he said, I. What I've noticed by going through this Bible, if you want to start seeing Satan in action, follow the pronouns. If it's all about what I want, me and my and myself, and it's all about me, and it's all about me, and it's all about me, you can be sure you're pretty close to your father, but your father is the devil. Adam and Eve, given everything in the garden. Everything, you can have it all. Just don't touch this right over here. This clever, this Lucifer, this Satan, this liar, this deceiver came and convinced them to go against the goodness of God, promising them a better life if they went against God, promising them the world. Oh, you'll be wiser, you'll be smarter than God himself. The devil even come to Jesus in the desert and said, if you will bow down and worship me, I'll give you all of this. But Jesus did not fall to his deceptive ways. And so I kind of knew that as a backdrop in my mind. When I start seeing I and me and my and what I want. I've seen a lot of members leave this church. You know what their whole thing was? Well, what I want and what I want to hear and what I like and what I'm thinking, I won't be here long. I won't be here long. The life of a Christian is that of submission of others. It's an otherward life. It doesn't make no sense in a way. The things of God doesn't make any sense to us. Even about the whole thing about even giving. Did you know there's more verses of Scripture on giving than there is on heaven or hell? Of course, preachers nowadays, we don't talk about giving because people get mad. Well, they're just trying to get me to give, and people won't come to church because they're just trying to get them to give. We try to eliminate all that, and we got them boxes back there you can give if you want to. But I'm going to tell you, the heart of God, people that love the heart of God, they give like God. God is a giver. God gave his son. God gave us everything that we have. I want you to see this. It doesn't make sense that you could give and have more after you give, but it's a principle that God works on. He says that where your treasures is, that's where your heart's going to be. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. This story right here that we find here, I was thinking about some other titles that we could have put for this sermon today, this morning. And I was thinking about, instead of you can be happy, I could have called this sermon Facebook Happy. Now, everybody knows Facebook Happy is more happy than regular happy, right? Because on Facebook, there's people there taking their picture in the bathroom, and they're so happy. And, they're making these duck looks and all this stuff, and their bathroom ain't even pretty, and some of them ain't even cleaned their bathroom up, but they're taking pictures in the bathroom. How many of those people on Facebook are happier than most regular people? They're always on a trip. They're at the beach, and they're laying in a chair, and you can just see their feet. Probably because the rest of them are fat, but I don't know. But they're just showing you their feet, like, look at me, I've got it going on, I'm at the beach, everybody, look, I'm at the beach. Or how many, the party may have been the deadest, dullest party you ever been to, but there's at least a picture where it looks like everybody act like you're having fun, take a few pictures, put it on Facebook. So I thought about, we could have named this Facebook Happy, but I think we all know that Facebook Happy is pretty much fake happy. We got so much fake stuff in the world today. We got fake news. Now there's places on there, they just tell people to get on there and make up news. I got suckered into John's son that won, he's the most athletic man in America. He won it 2 or 3 times over there in Cookeville. They had put on Facebook last night that he was a phenomenal bowler. Well, I told him today, I said, congratulations on your son. And he said, oh, that's a spoof. I said, what do you mean? He said, did you read the whole article? I said, my wife was reading it 2 hours driving down the road. He goes, well, that says he's so good at what he does that he won a bowling. The first time he didn't win, he came in second. Well, that had to do with his other thing. But what happened, he's such a good bowler, he had already won a perfect game, and he didn't even know that there was supposed to be holes in his ball. I didn't read that part, but they're making fun of him, but they done it like fake news. Well, we just going down the road. We didn't get to that last part because somebody called or something. But there's fake news and there's fake stuff people's put on there. There's a lot of people got a fake Christianity, to be honest. They're serving a fake God. They're believing in fake stuff. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But some of the stuff the world's telling you is not going to bring you a better life. And I got to admit, when I tell you to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it's not going to sound like he's talking about a better life either. It's going to sound like something that'd be the last thing you want to do. But, we could have called it Facebook happy or eternal happy. The other thing I noticed as I was going through here, not only after I got through looking at the I and the my and the me of this guy's thing, his writing of the end of his life and what he looked back on. The other thing I saw is the thing that he spent so much time on, none of those things had any eternity written on them. I went back and I highlighted in yellow houses. He built houses. And how many knows a house is, a house is great, right? How many knows that if you've got a 1,500 square feet house and you buy a 3,000 square feet house, you're twice as happy? How many knows that for a fact? Yeah. And then if you were to buy a 6,000 square foot house, just triple happy. That's triple happy. Everybody knows that. You can even watch that, come look at my crib thing, and you'll know those people are more happy. That's why they're shooting themselves in the head and killing themselves and, insane type people. We're not careful, we're buying the lie that more brings happiness, that stuff and things bring happiness. In this writing here, he says, I did not deny myself anything. If I wanted it, I got it. And he said it all ended up being vanity or meaningless. Folks, I don't want you to go through life and then when you get midway or toward the end, you realize, everything I've done has been pretty much garbage. It's been meaningless. Saul, by the way, he summed up the first half of his life was dung. If you don't know what dung is, ask your neighbor. It's stuff you clean off your shoes when you go through a field, maybe. On a farm, dung. He said it's all dung. Meaningless. We don't want to go through life with a meaningless existence. But the stuff that will really make you happy is probably not going to be on Facebook. Nobody's going to be taking pictures of it. Nobody's going to be sharing it. And he said it is meaningless. What he had learned that houses, I've lived in small houses. I thank God for the house I live in now. I thought, when I bought this house, I'd be so much more happier than the house I lived before. When I was a kid, though, I lived in a little bitty house. I bet it probably wasn't 1,000 square feet, maybe 1,200 square feet. And it was on a lake. I lived on a lake when I was a kid, but it was like bittersweet. We lived in an orange grove in a lake, and we were sharecroppers to the orange grove. My dad, he serviced the tractors that done the stuff in the orange grove. True story. And so we didn't have no bathrooms in this house. It's like almost like a cabin type situation. And you had to go past 3 other cabins to get to the shower house and bathrooms. Well, that wasn't too bad in the daytime, but at night, it kind of sucked, getting up in the middle of the night and you got to go past 3 cabins and there's snakes and everything else. Or you could use this little potty in your room. And that pretty much smells and sucks, We didn't have a shower at our house, but we didn't always want to go down there. You go down there to the little shower house, only had 3 cabins. And so you might have to wait. So at our house, we took a piece of plywood and made a piece of plywood, and then another piece of plywood, and another piece. And one of those plywoods had a little spring on it, and we could open it up, and we got in there to take a shower. You could see everything from here down and from here up. So if a neighbor comes by, yeah, I'm taking a shower. Probably one of the least of an existence we had as childhood in that house. But hey, I went to school telling hey, we live on a lake, man. We live right on a lake, man. And you know, it wasn't what it seemed. But I can tell you that was probably some of the funnest years of my life. The house was basically nothing, but we had a great time there. That little piece of shack had a lot of home in it. You know, some people live in houses, but it's never been made into a home. That little shack became a home to us. This guy had everything. He had everything. Anything he could imagine that he could ever possess, he said he pretty much had it. He didn't deprive himself from any pleasure, and it was all meaningless. I was in a church organization, started off and going at it with all I could as a young minister. And by 27 years of age, I was over 27 pastors. I was at the top of the pay scale. But just prior to that, I moved from Cleveland, Tennessee to Knoxville, Tennessee. And I got to this nice brick church just been built. I had a nice parsonage, a 3,000 square foot beautiful parsonage. I had the big giant satellite dish where everybody could see that I had a big satellite dish in my yard. We just furnished it with everything you can imagine. I thought that was pretty good at about 27 years of age. But I tell you, you know what I wanted and what had got me there? I wanted the heart of God. I love when there's songs out, younger generation sings it, that in your presence, Lord. Lord, I want in your presence, God. Just to be in your presence is what really matters. That was my yearning heart as a young man, is the presence of God. And I was praying, God, I want your presence. I want to follow you. I want to be obedient to you. And it seemed like right when I reached the utopia of what everybody said makes you happy, the house, the car, the nice neighborhood and all that, I was praying one day, and Lord let me know it's all fixing to be give up. It's all fixing to come to an end. I couldn't hardly believe my own hearing. I went to a church meeting that I'd never been to this church before, never met the pastor, never met the evangelist that it was turned over to. And this guy stood up, and I really felt the guy was from, really following God. And he got up there and he said, this man, he pointed to me and he said, I want you to stand. He said, you've been praying every day, the heart of God and all this stuff, and said, the Lord's fixing to change your ministry. And he said, you're fixing to change your ministry, and you're going to be, there's some great things going to happen. And he said, I want to talk to you after service. He said, you've actually the Lord's told you some stuff and you wrote it in a prayer diary and you haven't told anybody else. That was absolute truth. I had done that. And I said, how can that guy know that? Here's the thing I want you to understand as we get into this. I'm going to come back to that story. He said, I understood about these I built houses and vineyards and gardens and parks. All these things are temporal that he built. Temporal things he built. Reservoirs. How many knows if you got a garden, if you don't keep gardening it every day, it won't be a garden very long. It'll be a weed fest. I know people come and they'll start putting flower beds. I had a guy rented my house one time. I had a house over, and he put in all kind of flower beds. And at first I thought, man, that's great. That guy's just really fixing up where I rented. And then when he moved out, the next people didn't want to keep up all that stuff, and then I'd have them to keep it all up. All this stuff requires work. Houses, if you got twice the size of the house, you got twice the air conditioning costs, the water costs, the electric bill, the roofing. I mean, all of it is twice. There's twice as much insurance you got to keep. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there. So more does not necessarily absolutely make you happy. So he said he just wanted everything. Here's the first thing that I really feel like I begin to get with this sermon. We've got to break the connection between temporary pleasure and lasting happiness. Temporary pleasure and lasting happiness. We many times will go for the quick temporary pleasure, but what we're missing is the lasting happiness. In this story right here about Moses, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Now I want you to get the story about this Moses. Moses, when he was born at a very terrible time. They were killing all the firstborn because there had been this prophetic thing that there was going to be a leader come and lead God's people out of Egypt's bondage. And so they were going to kill all the firstborn. Well, Moses was a firstborn. And so his mama decided to put him in a basket and float him down the river. Moses started out as a basket case, so that gives some of you hope. He was floated down the river, and guess what? Pharaoh's daughter was out messing around at the river, maybe swimming or whatever, and she sees this basket. She opens up, and there's a little cute baby in there, like a little kid taking a puppy back home to his daddy. She said, "Can I keep him? Can I keep him? Can I keep him?" And Pharaoh said, "Okay, honey, you can keep him." Out of all the people that Pharaoh had killed that would challenge his kingdom, the very one that he didn't kill, that lived in his household, that was raised in his household, is the one that would lead all of God's people out of that bondage. I want you to think about that. Tell me there's not a sovereign God that knows what he's doing. But another thing I got this, when Moses had grown up. What's another word for grown up? Mature. There's a lot said in the Bible about he don't want us to be children. He wants us to grow up. He wants us to grow up. We tell people here, you need to get here. You need to accept Christ. You need to belong in his body, in his family, get to know brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. You need to belong. You need to grow up. Why? Because until you grow up, you're going to make childish decisions. He says when Moses was grown up, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Well, what big deal is that? He's not going to be called Pharaoh's daughter. No, you don't get what he's turning down. Because he was raised in Pharaoh's house and he was considered Pharaoh's son, he had everything. He had everything, folks. He could have had a harem of girls. He could have had armies that he just commanded. He could have lived in the finest of the finest. He could have had vineyards and houses and homes and palaces. Because, his dad owned it all, buddy. Pharaoh was it. But when he'd grown up, while he was growing up, they needed someone to take care of that little baby. So they put out a plea to need someone we need someone to help nurse this baby and all that. So they have this woman come in, and guess what? The woman they picked his mother. His actual mother got to live in Pharaoh's house with him and actually got to help raise him as a servant. She got paid, or she got, special perks to be her own child's nanny. Tell me God's not sovereign. But I'm going to tell you something. She grew up, and finally, as she began to grow up, she said, you're not like them. You're really one of God's. You're one of God's children. Here's what really happened to you. You were floated down the river, and she picked you up. And so they were killing kids, so we just let you stay there, and that was the way God protected you. You're in the very kingdom that one day you're going to raise up an army, and you're going to set God's people free. So then he started noticing his people, his own kinfolks, that he really belonged to, and he was seeing they were being beaten, and they were being tortured, and they were being forced to take mud and straw and make bricks. And, they were brick makers and all that. They were being treated horrible. And so he began to think of a plan to free his people. But to do that, when he grew up, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Now, I'm going to ask you today, by a show of hands, how many likes the word endure better than the word enjoy? All right, how many likes the word enjoy better than the word endure? So, day-to-day regular living, what most of us would choose, we would choose, oh, that's going to make me so happy. I'm going to do the thing I know I'm going to enjoy. What if God's calling you to do the thing that you must have to endure? That's why I say if we're not careful, we can miss the will of God very, very easily in our life. That if we understand that Satan is all about what I want and what my and me and what will, make me happy, and it's all about me. If you realize that's the technique, that's the deception, that's the lies of the devil, then it would make you want to get very humble and say things like Adam and Eve goes, no, yeah, I'll take that, whatever you want. He was the first Adam. You know what the second Adam came to do? And he was actually God. He wasn't pretending to be God. He was really in the heavens, not pretending to be in the heavens. The second man, Adam, he came, Jesus, and he said, Lord, not my will, but thine be done. Jesus was trying to teach us the way to a better life is to humble yourself. The way to a better life is to deny yourself. The way to a better life is not about me, it's not about it's not about what I want, but it's what's going to be the best for those that are involved. That's not what we're hearing today in all the self-help books. That guy that called me out in that meeting, and I'm telling you, that guy had to be from God, because I had wrote this long thing in a prayer diary. He said, I want to talk to you after service. So he come up and he said, I was at a hotel today and I was praying, and the Lord showed me you and showed me you praying, and here's what you were praying about, and you wrote it in a prayer diary. I saw it as clear as day. And he said, God's going to open up a door for you to do this ministry. And I'm not kidding. About 2 weeks after I talked to him, I got a call. He was not connected even though I got a call, and they wanted me to leave Knoxville and come to Nashville and be representative of over 27 pastors. I was going to do youth ministry and a bunch of other stuff. We done mission work in Memphis. At 27 years old. That just don't happen, folks. Everybody goes, who does he know? Why would that guy pick him? I didn't even know. I just knew that God was doing that. Aren't you think that now if God is asking you to do that, and you found the heart of God some way or another through your prayer life and that stuff, some way or another you got in touch with God and God chose you to do this thing, then I know after that it was amazing, right? You probably had a 6,000 square feet house and a big car and a big wallet. No, that's not what happened at all. I wish I could tell you that's what happened. No, what happened after that is I sold 3,000 square foot of furniture for almost nothing. First, I tried to store it, and the storage cost was so high, I sold it for almost nothing because I didn't want to pay the storage cost anymore. So I lost all that. I moved me and my family in first a 32-foot travel trailer, and then later I was able to bump that up to a 38-foot fifth wheel. And we lived in that thing for 5 years because we couldn't afford to have something to travel in and have a house at the same time. So we lived exclusively for 5 years in a travel trailer. I can't tell you how many flats we had. I can't tell you one day that a guy changed the tire and he put the tire up underneath the truck because I was headed to a meeting, and the tire he put against the muffler there, the exhaust, and it caught on fire, and the back of my truck was on fire. I was down in Memphis, and a tire came off the trailer, and I broke down right, with those little concrete walls there, and you're right up, and you're trying to change a tire and all that. That was me. But I can also tell you that was probably the 5 most happiest years of my life. Don't make sense, does it? We had less money then. I'd go to get my income tax done, and they go, where's the rest of your stuff? I go, there's not any. They said, you're below poverty level. And your expenses that are exceeding what you made. All I can say is that's what I got, and that's what I spent, and God did the rest. I'm not kidding, for 5 years. Happiness does not come from where most of us think happiness comes from. He wasn't telling me. So here's what this guy told me after this meeting. He called me up and he said, here's what I want to tell you. He said, you're going to be blessed. You're going to be blessed in a lot of ways. He said, you're going to have many, many people saved. You're going to have so many people saved that people's going to become jealous of your ministry and they're going to begin to hate you for it. Folks, I'm not kidding. I'd get up there, I'd be sitting in a meeting like this. A minister with the most people saved this year, Dennis Daniels, come up and I'm going, that can't be so. And I went up there and got a trophy and some junk. Then next year, I think 3 or 4 years in a row, most people they ever had in youth camp, most everything. I mean, just, like I was like Donald Trump. It was big, big. I'm not kidding. But he said, I need to tell you something. He said, this adventure God's calling you on, it's going to end a lot different than you think it's going to end. He said, you're eventually going to be hated in your ministry. You're going to be stripped of your ministry. And he said, God just wanted me to tell you that it is his will. It's going to be all right, and he will take care of you. Folks, it happened. I went through that period of time. Everything that man had told me was happening. At the end, my license were taken. I went from the highest paying job scale of that ministry down to nothing. I had to borrow money to get into an apartment. I almost lost everything I had, the trailer, the truck. I finally got the credit union to be able to take and buy it back, and I would pay the extra because the collateral on it was higher than what I owed, so I had to pay the rest in a personal note. I'm telling you this to let you understand that sometimes the mature thing to do is to take the hard road. The mature thing sometimes is to take the way of suffering. He chose to endure the treatment with the people of God rather than enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Now, we don't normally, especially in church, we don't like to use the word pleasure and sin together because we don't want y'all to know that sin is fun. I hope nobody you didn't hear that, did you? That sin is fun. Folks, sin is fun. Sin is fun. Ain't no doubt about it. There's some people today out there having more fun than we are. Heard a guy one time, his preacher's up there, and he was preaching like, I don't know where everybody's at. Y'all know people ain't coming to church, ain't doing right. And he was just giving the people. And one guy goes, I tell you what, I wish we're the dumb people that come to listen to you. The people that you need to be preaching to, they're out on the lake, they're out on the golf course. Go out there and tell them off. We're the ones that were so stupid, we come to listen to you. So I don't want to do that. But I'm telling you, there is a better life. And the better life does not appear to be the better life. It doesn't appear that if you choose to suffer instead of going the easy way, that it's going to come out better in the long run. Dave Ramsey, I love to read his books because I believe the guy's real. The guy set out to have a bunch, and he set out to do this and that and the other, and he began to leverage this against that and that and that, and eventually it all fell in, and he went bankrupt. And he tells a story about how hard it was of digging out of that bankrupt. But he began to look at the principles of God, and he began to read the principles of God, and they didn't make no sense to him and all the stuff he had learned, but he began to do it regardless. And he made up his mind he was never going to be in debt anymore, not for even a house or a car or anything. And he set out, and today he's got a radio program. Because of the worst day in his life, he's got a better day in his life, and he tells people now how, even though it don't make no sense, follow the principles of God, and things will go good for you. Now, the thing is, when we're young, and he said when Moses had grew up, he was able to make a decision to do the hard thing. When you're young, you can ask my grandkids, and they're pretty good grandkids. You can ask most young, I want what I want now. I want it now. Well, that's a sign of immaturity, right? If you want it now, you can't wait. You can't delay gratification. You got to have it now. But Moses was, when Moses decided that he was going to forsake Pharaoh and Pharaoh's house and his kingdom and all that he could be, I would love to tell you that it went really good for Moses. He left and he got a nice chariot with these spinning wheels and mud flaps, and it had everything, buddy. He had women. No, you know what happened to him? He tried to help some people, and he killed a guy, and then he had to run from Pharaoh, and he run to the backside of the desert, and he had to live with his mother-in-law for 40 years, and his father-in-law. And they were always telling him what he should have done, could have done, would have done, should have done. You know, they were telling him. And finally, he starts realizing, I ain't living right. I've run from God. Didn't go the way I planned. Just because I'm following God didn't mean everything's going to go good. One day he's just out and about, and he sees this bush that's burning. Even though it's burning, it's not consumed. And he gives them, and look at that bush. He said, that bush should be consumed by now, and it's not. What's going on with that bush? And out of that bush, he hears the voice of God. And he had assumed that God had forgot him. And he hears the voice of God, and God says, Moses, take off your shoes, for where you stand is holy ground. I want you to go lead my people now out of Egypt's bondage. Moses now was very humbled. I can't do that, Lord. I'm not qualified. I'm not educated. I don't speak well. God said, I didn't ask about any of that. I just want your willingness. Finally, he persuades Moses to follow his route this time. Moses starts getting things right with God. He's in the presence of God, and so he realizes, I haven't done a lot of things. I haven't been keeping God's covenant right. I've got 2 sons, and, we're supposed to circumcise them. They've never been circumcised. If you don't know what circumcised is, ask your neighbor. He didn't do that, so he finally said, well, I need to get my life back in line with God's word, and he had his boys circumcised. His wife said, that's a filthy, bloody covenant of a religion I'm not going to have anything to do with. And so because Moses tried to follow the will of God, his wife left with the 2 boys. She said, I ain't going back with you. I don't believe in your God. So there Moses is now going on with his life, and that's where you read in Matthew that Moses divorced. But Moses, he was trying to endure. Moses was trying to deny himself. Moses was trying to do all the right stuff, but all the wrong stuff was happening to him. We read later on that he remarried an Ethiopian woman. So just because you follow the will of God does not mean everything's going to go. Because, see, our life, this is not all there is, folks. There's a place in there where God is so fed up with those people. God just one time opened the earth and just swallowed some of them. Moses, they got rid of part of your problem today, the griping people. You would think if somebody come and delivered you, everybody would be so happy about you coming to deliver them, they would just be, whatever you want, Moses, I'm here with you. I've got your back, buddy. No, they griped and complained. You should have left us in Egypt. I don't know why you come got us out there. We were making some good bricks. No, that ain't what happened. They griped and they complained. We don't have anything good to eat. So he prays and God sends manna down. They made like all kind of breads and manicotti and all kind of stuff like that. And they go, we're getting tired of this manna, just manna all the time. Manna every day, manna, same thing, same old stuff. So they had quail come. They had quail and manna then. And it just fell out of the sky. They didn't even have to work for it. He had water coming out of a rock. All the water they could drink. And all they did is gripe and complain. You take people that don't have the heart of God and they'll never be happy. They'll gripe and complain no matter what they live in, no matter what they drive, where they're at, where their lot is in life. They'll never be happy. They'll never be happy. One time God was sick of them himself. Moses said, if you're going to wipe them out, wipe me out too. I've come too far with these people. And even Moses mediated between him and God. Moses, there come a time, and I may share about this in a couple of weeks, he was promised the promised land, but he struck a rock and he done something he wasn't supposed to do. And, it's like Moses is not going to go to the promised land. I got a little secret for you. Moses didn't even care if he went to the promised land anyway. He had already been to where there was everything. There was gardens and there was reservoirs and there were houses and home and all that. He had been in Pharaoh's thing, and he can't really see the promised land measured up much. And God said, well, I tell you what, they can go on to the promised land if they want to, but I'm not going to go. I'll send an angel to lead them on in. Moses said, no, if you're not going to go, I don't want to go. I want to stay with your presence. See, that was a lot different than the people. Moses went on the mountain, and God had invited all the people to come up and have fellowship with God on the mountain. All of them. They could have all been right there just like they were in the garden, and God would have talked to them, and God talked to them, and they ran off the mountain and said, we don't ever want to hear him again. Matter of fact, you just go up there, and whatever he tells you to tell us to do, write it in a book, and we'll do it. They would rather have a book about God than God of the book. Folks, God's not wanting you to just read this. He wants you to get this in your heart, that you know not only the book of God, but you know the God of the book. That he lives in you, that you have a daily conversation, that if he wants you to endure hard, ill treatment, to be in his presence, you would rather do that. Because, see, here's what we don't understand that Moses understood. No, Moses knew to be in the presence of God. In the presence of God, there is joy evermore. And it's not based on your finances. It's not based on the size of your house. It's not based on your car, how much you own. In the presence of God, there is joy. That's the better life I'm talking about. The better life, there is joy. Some have wrote it, there's joy unspeakable, and it's full of glory. There's joy. I want you to have the better life, not the lie, not the Facebook life. I want you to have the real thing, the real joy. But I got to admit, sometimes it comes with hardships. Sometimes it comes with hardship. I'm not promising any of you, if you serve God, you'll never have any more troubles. You're probably going to have more troubles. I'm not going to promise you, if you serve God, all your prayers are going to be answered, because they probably won't, because a lot of our prayers are selfish, motivated prayers. But I'm telling you, if you will seek the presence of God and say, you know what Paul said? Paul said, I want to know God, even if it means knowing God in his sufferings. I would rather be in his sufferings with God than be out of the sufferings without God. I don't know why God's wanting me to preach this way, but I'm just telling you, the better life is not going to be what you think you're going to be, but it's what we need. It's what I need. I want us to bow our heads for just a moment. I'll pick this up next week, and I'm not going to rush through the series. I just don't feel led to do that. Some of you right now are very unhappy with your life. And some of you, in comparison with the world's population, you've had it pretty good. But you're not happy. Some of you right now are in the midst of transition, and for a while now you have felt like the devil is attacking you, and all this bad stuff coming your way is not from God. Go back and read the stories. When God first calls you, you may come to know the endure part before you know the joy part. God loves you. That's why he's moving you. Some of you said, well, I got a pretty good life. He's trying to move you even from the good life to the better life, the eternal life, that's going to last. That's where you can look back on your life and say, I did something that mattered before I died. I'm praying that you'll stay with us in this series and come to know what this better life is all about. That you will get it, that you'll want it, that you will covet it, that you'll just say, I want to line my life up with God whether I understand it or not. Let's bow our heads at this time. How many would say today, by the showing of your hands, I want the presence of God, no matter what that looks like in my life. Will you raise your hand? Well, that's some good people today, honest. Folks, that's what I want. All this other junk is junk stuff. I want the better life. Sometimes people call it the simple things of life. I want the better life for you and for me. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray today that you would help us, Lord, to find this beautiful life, the real thing, the better life. That you would help us to come to know you personally. God, I want to know you. I don't want to just read about you in a book, but I want to personally know you. And God, I want the better life. And I'm asking you today to reach out to this congregation and touch lives today. Lord, some are hurting today. Life has been brutal. And you're going to take them right from where they're at and give them a better life. I know it, Lord. I know it's going to happen. And I'm asking it to happen today in Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to come down and ask our prayer team members to come up. And I want us to go, Lord, in prayer. As a congregation, we want to pray for Marissa. She's has really got she went to the doctor and now they're thinking that she has cancer. Marissa that sings up here, they got to do more tests on her, but we want to really pray for her. And you may have special needs, a doctor's appointment, things going on in your life, and you say, I need help from God. I believe that God cares and he wants to help us today. Let us all stand. These wonderful young people is going to sing this song again. Just a little bit of it. I want them to get to that part here in a minute where it says, he didn't want to spend heaven without us. I like that. Anybody want prayer today? Please come at this time. We'd love to pray with you. Sing this song with us.
Through the eyes of men, it seems there's so much reality.